Good afternoon. I just spent some time looking at your discussion 3 post that refers to your informative speech topics and peer-reviewed research. And I noticed some common mistakes that I want to address this afternoon. The first mistake that I noticed is that many of you are not using peer-reviewed research. So some of you certainly provided 3 sources for each one of your topics, but they are not peer-reviewed. So remember that books, magazines, newspapers, and websites are not deemed to be peer-reviewed research. So I encourage you to go back to the database in the library and find scholarly research that is peer-reviewed for each one of your topics. So again, some of you are using books, magazines, newspapers, and websites. That is not deemed to be peer-reviewed. The second mistake that I noticed is that many of you are not using the APA format. And I realize that for most of you, this is probably a brand new process. The APA is confusing. Most of you might be used to MLA or Chicago. So I encourage you to go to the front of our D2L course page, and on the left-hand side, you will see an APA reference guide that was produced by our library that has examples of any type of research that you would use for this speech, and it tells you how to go about citing that research using the APA format. So again, I know for most of you this is new, it's confusing, and it changes constantly, but go back to that APA reference guide that the library produced that's on the front of our D2L course page to see how you should be citing your research in APA format. The third mistake that I noticed is that many of you are using outdated research. And I realize that some of this might be topic specific, but for some of you, you were citing research from the 1970s. So I would go by the idea that it should be no older than 2 years old when you use your research. And again, that might be topic specific, but I highly encourage you to look at your research and make sure that your research is current. It's not just about taking the first 3 hits that you find in the database. It's about finding the most recent information to support your subpoints, which support your main points, which support your thesis. So I would go by the rule that if it's older than 2 years, you should not use it. And again, that might be topic specific, where older research might be something that is required and acceptable. The fourth mistake that I notice is that many of you are selecting topics that are very broad, such things as global warming, cancer, smoking. So I encourage you to think about really narrowing your topics because many of those topics that you're choosing are great topics, but they're simply an umbrella of which there is a much more specific topic underneath that you need to address within the time limits that's provided. You cannot talk about global warming in the time limit that we provide for this speech, but you could talk about a very specific aspect of global warming, such as the rising sea level. That would be a very specific focus of global warming that you certainly could accomplish in the time limit that is provided. And the last thing related to topics is make sure that your topics are informative in nature and not persuasive in nature. So remember that the goal of this speech is simply to broaden my knowledge base on a particular topic. It is not to convince me to take action or to influence me to believe a certain way. So for some of you, the topics and the way that you phrase them, you want to convince me to do something, or you want to convince me that something is harmful, or you want to convince me to take a particular action. So again, that flirts with that line between what is informative and what is persuasive. So when you propose your topics on Friday, in that discussion post, the topic that you want to do for your speech, make sure that you're approaching it from an informative perspective to simply broaden my knowledge base, not from a persuasive perspective. So again, if you have any questions about any of the items that I addressed in this video or anything in the class, by all means, certainly email me. I'd be happy to address your questions, talk about any concerns that you have regarding peer-reviewed research, topics, that kind of thing, and anything in this class. By all means, give me a shout out via email, and I'd be happy to address your questions and concerns. And until we meet next time, I hope that you're having a great time in this class. And again, if there's anything I can do to help you, please let me know. Have yourself a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.